Hey everyone, thanks for being with us. Thank you for tuning in. I am Brandon with Restoration Covenant Church. And today I just wanted to be reading a passage for you from John 19, verses 1 through 14. And then Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. The soldiers twisted a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put a purple robe on him. They said, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they hit him with their hands. Again, Pilate went out and said to them, "Look, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no guilt in him." Then Jesus came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." When the chief priests and officers saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no guilt in him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard these words, he was more afraid, and entered the praetorium again, and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Pilate said to him, "Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know what I have power to release you, and power to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power at all over me, unless it were given to you from above. Therefore, he who handed me over to you has the greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to release him, but the Jews cried out, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Whoever makes himself a king speaks against Caesar." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Pavement, which in Hebrew is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. He said to the Jews, "Here is your king." What a great passage. Well, for me, um, you know, looking over just a small portion of this passage and, really kind of narrowing in, God just kind of spoke to me and really showed me, I think we all become, very familiar as believers with, the Easter story. And, a lot of times we're very focused on, what was going on with Jesus and what happened to Jesus and everything leading up to that. What role did his disciples play? And of course, in the text before, he's constantly foreshadowing what's to come. And by this point, we kind of have an idea. Well, I think we know what's going to happen. But for me, what really stood out, which I thought was kind of interesting this time around, was the role that Pontius Pilate played. Um, and kind of that critical, pivotal moment. That led up to the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus, and what he did for all of us as believers and non-believers. But what I thought was interesting is that in the secular writings, Pontius Pilate was seen as a very cruel and just harsh man who was constantly inciting violence between the Samaritans and the Jews in the region that he was presiding over. And so it's really interesting to me what stood out was you see him almost kind of waning in this what to do with Jesus, and the judgment that he was going to ultimately have to preside over, which he really didn't want any part of. He didn't really believe in the Jewish law and what they stood for, and he really wanted no part of it. But at this point in time, he had no choice. And even in the text it says, and when he heard this, he was afraid. And I think that really speaks a lot to his heart of hearts and how he felt about Jesus, questioning him, trying to dig down and get the truth. And Jesus even says before this that he is the truth, and those who have the truth have ears to hear Jesus. And Pilate is kind of taken aback. And I think, he really starts to look inward and see, what everything that he had done prior to this point. I think he really started to question all of that. And that really just goes back to the fact that we all have a purpose and a role to play, just like Pontius Pilate did, who could be seen as a very cruel man, but up to this point, he's starting to question everything. I feel like, at least with our with the Bible, that's the story that we get. And so I think that's really important to, as we are kind of, everybody's indoors. We can't exactly be with family and friends at this, at this time. we can't have our normal church gatherings and meetings. So I think it's really good to maybe take a step back, look inwards at ourselves, and just kind of see what is the role that we are playing. What does God have for us? What is His perfect will for us? Whether we know it or not. Same thing with Pontius Pilate. He found himself in a role he didn't want at this particular time with Jesus, but yet God had a perfect plan, even using Pontius Pilate. So, I think that speaks a lot to where we're at, what can we do, and what is God calling us to? What have we not stepped into that we can start today? And as we kind of die to flesh with Jesus on the cross, we have hope coming, that there is a larger purpose for us, and let's just be prayerful to see what that is and what God is saying about that. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you taking the time, checking us out. Be blessed. Have a great day.